Hi there, this is Bible Talk with Bible Jim. We're going to be doing something a little different over the next few weeks. We're going to be dealing with questions. You know, wherever you go and you have an encounter with anyone and the subject of God or Christianity is brought up, there's always questions. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be running through a number of questions that are often asked the Christian. And so we might as well get going. So here we go. People, they say, answer my questions, please. I mean, they're sincere. Particularly in the day that we live in, there are so many people out there that just flat they just don't have the answers for life. They don't understand why they're even here. And so when they do have an opportunity, when you're being respectful and kind and nice to them, and they have a semblance of trust for you, they will ask you some very sincere questions from their hearts, and that's what I have found. Answer my questions, please. Well, 1 Peter 3:15 says, "But in your hearts set apart Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this in gentleness and self-respect." And so that's essentially what we always want to keep in mind. There's a tendency to argue with people. There's a tendency to become over defensive. There's a tendency to preach at people. What we need to do is we need to first study ourselves to show ourselves approved, and that's why we have these programs as sort of a little help for you to be able to get some answers, so that when you are asked a question, you're able to, it doesn't rock your world, and you don't have to lash back at the person in some unbecoming way. And so you're able to, as the Bible suggests, you're to be ready to give everyone an answer for the faith that's in you. So let's get going here. The first question that we have is, where did God come from? Everyone has a conscience, and everyone is aware of the presence of God. Even an atheist is, whether he admits it or not. And but they have questions about God. And one very fundamental question is, where did God come from? Well, we're going to take a look at that. And where did God come from? God did not come from anything. God did not come from anything. He was in the state of eternal being, the uncaused cause of all things. So in other words, God was in the state of being. He'd always been in the state of being. He wasn't caused by anything. He's the uncaused cause of all things. That's the God of the scriptures. That's the God of the Bible. And so if you reject this reality, you then should explain why. You just can't be brain dead on something this important. The whole concept of God is, what could be more important than that? You look up at the stars, you know that you were not and you are. So, are you going to continue to be an R? Are you going to continue to live even after physical death? These are questions. and everybody's faced with them. Some people they try to ignore them, but how can you ignore something so phenomenal as one, you are alive, and two, considering the fact of God. Nothing is more important. Nothing is more important than that. You can't just turn your back and be brain dead on something this important. Now, there are people that aren't Christians, and here are the conclusions. Some very, very smart people have come to on this most important issue. In other words, not everyone agrees with us. Everybody's, they're not all Christians. They're not all believers in God in some form. You know what I mean? And so they're entitled to free speech. They're entitled to come up with something other than the way we see it. We've got to give them the freedom to draw their own conclusions. We can't, twist their arm into anything or put our hands around their neck and force them. And so we attempt to respect all people, and we have to admit as Christians, we should admit that there are some people, some very smart people that have come to and address this most important issue. And so here are the conclusions some very, very smart people have come to on this most important issue. Nothing, oh boy, it's important. And so we have to allow for these people the diversity. We need to honor diversity. And so I want to share with you, so you might just try to keep control of yourself here, because we've got to be able to deal with other people's views too. And so here's one. This is what they believe. These extremely smart people of our day, they call them scientists in every other walk of life, that essentially, to begin with, there was absolutely nothing, and nothing exploded and created our universe. This is what they believe. Originally, there was absolutely nothing, and then all of a sudden, there was this great explosion, and it created our universe. Now, we have to be fair here, folks. They don't all believe that. They don't all believe that. So let's give them a break. My word. They don't all believe that. And so there's people that have stepped away from that and said, no, I can't buy that just nothing exploded and created our universe. I just can't buy that. And so they go a different direction. And so hold on to your hats, folks. Here it comes. They choose to believe rather than nothing exploded, they believe one small step above nothing. A small particle did it. It wasn't nothing, but it's just a little small particle. A small little particle did it. It wasn't nothing, because from nothing, nothing comes. Everybody should know that, but some don't. And so they choose to believe that it was a small, very small particle. A small particle did it. The size of a Planck length. How big is a Planck length? Okay, so a small step above nothing, a small particle did it, the size of a Planck length. Now, to understand how big this particle was, to try to understand how the size of this particle that exploded and was responsible for our universe, we have to kind of come to grips with the reality of just how small this thing was. And so you have to kind of imagine if an atom was the size of the Earth. So we have an atom. Everybody knows what an atom is. If that atom got bigger and bigger and bigger and expanded to the exact size of the Earth, but then you had the normal size atom that we're all aware of. Okay, let's see what this says here now, so we all understand. If an atom was the size of the Earth, a Planck length would be smaller than the size of an atom. It would be smaller, the Planck length. This little particle, if you took an atom and it expanded it to the size of the Earth, and then you took an atom that we know of, the size of the atom we know of, the Planck length would actually be smaller than that atom in comparison to the size of the Earth atom. And so to get an idea how big an atom is, how many atoms fit on the head of a pin? This gives us an idea. It's only about 5 million hydrogen atoms could fit on the head of a pin. That's all it could be. 5 million hydrogen atoms is all that could fit on the head of a pin. And so if you just took one of those atoms and you wanted to compare it to the size of that particle Planck length, the Planck length would be 100 million billion times smaller than that atom. So we're talking about something really, really small. And so, we know that from this nothing exploded and created the universe. That's not too feasible for some people. So they choose to believe that it was one small step above nothing. A small Planck length did it. The size of a Planck length would be if you took the atom and it was the size of the Earth and compared it to a real atom, the Planck length would be smaller than the real atom it was being compared to. And that atom is pretty small, 500 million billion of them, 500 million of them could fit on the head of a pin, and a Planck length is considerably smaller than that. So we're talking about something kind of small, okay? Now, this is starting to get exciting because now these guys are real smart people. They call them scientists and they call them the super educated. So we want to be real. We want to take this stuff real serious, man. Because they say the whole universe. Oh, what are they saying here? They say the whole universe would have been condensed, crammed into a particle the size of the Planck length. The whole universe would have been crammed into a particle the size of the Planck length. Now, just in our solar system alone, you can see how big some of these planets are. Jupiter, it says, and Mars, and then you see Earth down there. And that's just our solar system. This is just our solar system out of 3,200 known systems like this. 3,200 with a lot of, and you notice that to the left there, that's the sun. It's pretty big too. It would have been crammed in too. Plus all these real huge, big, old stars and planets from all these 3,200 would also have been crammed into this little particle that's 100 million billion times smaller than the atom that we know of. Wow, that's amazing. These are the very best and the brightest boys we have that continue to fight against the existence of God. You see, they don't want to believe in God, so they've got to come up with something to explain the stars in the sky, the eyeball, the hummingbird, the snowflake, the rainbow. They've got to come up with something. And boy, they sure did it. Now, not all of them rejected that this nothing exploded, but a good many of them have rejected that concept that nothing exploded and created the universe. And so what they've come up with is just a little step above that nothing exploding, and they have reduced it to this tiny little particle, 100 million billion times smaller than the nucleus of an atom was there, and it basically just flat exploded. This is what they believe. Oh, excuse me. They believe that our whole universe was crammed into that little Planck length. It was condensed into that small little Planck length. Yeah, that's what they believe. These are now. What do we have here? Oh, when we let's see this now. What does this say? Let's be gentle. When you send your kids off to college, this is the kind of stuff they learn. What kind of stuff they learn? That originally there was this real small, little Planck length, and the whole universe was crammed into it. This is the kind of stuff they learn when you send your children off to college. Why is it? Well, it has a reason. It has a reason. Calm down. Don't get too excited here. Why? Simply because we have the best learners that have ever existed in the history of the world. Today, on the planet Earth, there is no one that has ever lived that can learn better than the students we have today. They can consume information better than anyone that has ever lived on the planet Earth. They're the best learners, and I might add, they're the best forgetters the planet has ever seen. But nonetheless, we have to give them 5 blue stars for being the best learners the world has ever seen. Man, I take my hat off to them. Yes. But yet we also have the worst thinkers in the history of the world. The worst thinkers in the history of the world. Because these guys can learn and they can cite what these professors tell them, these scientists tell them, but they don't have the common sense to understand that cramming all the universe, our solar system, and 32 other star systems into a Planck length, a particle that's 100 million billion times smaller than the atom, they don't have the ability to think that thing through and realize that that's kind of dumb. But that's what we have today. The best learners, the best forgetters, and the worst thinkers the world has ever had. Oh, I'll tell you, isn't it something? It is really, really something. Well, let's see here. Oh, yes. Now I have a few questions. Yes, I have a few questions because these real smart guys that advocate this one step above nothing, this little particle existed. So let me ask a couple questions. Just a few questions. One, where did the Planck length particle come from? That's a good question. Where did the Planck length particle come from? And 2, what was it made of? So you get the gravity of this question. So you understand. When this Planck length existed, there was no space. There was no nothing. It just was there. How long it had been there? Well, they would say it's always been there. Well, now what caused it to explode? Oh, we don't know that. You mean it had always been there for eternity, but all of a sudden, in a moment, in a day and time, and there was no day or time, but there was just this moment. Well, whatever, it just exploded, and you don't know why, but you really believe it. And you're teaching all our children this. And you don't. It was just there. This little small itsy bitsy little thing was just there, eternally there. Now, what was it made of? They don't have a clue. But I can tell you this: we as Christians believe in God is spirit, and whatever this Planck length was, I guarantee you, what they believe it is a whole lot closer to a spirit, a wave, a spirit than Mount Everest or your shoe. You know, in every way. Once you understand where these people are coming from. But where did the Planck length particle come from? You know, they have no problem at all believing that this little itsy bitsy thing, 100 million billion times smaller than an atom, the whole universe, and was crammed into it, and it was just there eternally. They don't have any problem with that at all. But for some unforeseen reason, they've got a terrible problem with God just being there, the uncaused cause of all things. They're all right with a particle that they don't know what it's made of and really know anything about, other than they have a tremendous amount of faith in this particle, just on a given moment in just exploded. And as a result of that explosion, here we are, friends. You know, there's one guy seems to think the reason they believe in a particle being eternal rather than God being eternal is the minute they suggest the concept that God is there and is eternal, not the Planck length. The minute they come up with that, they come up with the idea that they may be responsible for their lives. They may be responsible for their actions. They may be accountable to this entity. And they don't want that. And they've got to come up with something else. Now, what I just told you is whether you know it or not, is what the majority of all the intelligent people out there that aren't Christians believe, that aren't religious people. Now, there's some variance. I'll make a little disclaimer here. There are some people that don't believe in what I just said, but they are few in number. And the stuff, you think this is amazing. You know, you ought to hear what they have to say, how they explain how all this stuff got here. That's why most intelligent people believe in what I just got through saying. Most of your scientists and most of your people in the know believe in what I say, because it really gets weird with these other concepts, which I won't go necessarily into at this time. But there's a few out there that are being peddled that are just absolutely. You think this is ridiculous? That's even more ridiculous. Now, I'll tell you one you might be able to identify. They think the whole thing happened as a result of UFOs in some other dimension that floated in here and created all this stuff. But the problem is this: no matter what they come up with, no matter what they come up with, don't ever be afraid of asking, where did it come from? What's it made of? Are there others beyond that? You see, something by its nature is eternal, or something non-eternal emerged from nothing. And so everybody knows that from nothing comes. Most people do. But that's why they come up with this Planck length concept. But whatever they come up with, whatever their evolution in their weird thinking comes up with, we have the ability to ask, where'd it come from? And they're going to have to, and then they say, well, it came from this, and it came from this. Well, you go back. And at some point, you have to have something that is eternal by nature, that is the uncaused cause of all things. It's just that simple, my friend. The only hard part about the whole process is they don't want to say it's God. Anything but God for them. Okay, well, this is so very interesting. I could go on, but we've got to get to the next question. I'll tell you, I should tell you some of the more ridiculous things they believe in, but no, I'm going to move on now. I just wet your whistle. You can look into this stuff. It's not hard to trace, and so you can know who you're talking to when they say, where did God come from? And then you can identify with them the various options. That first of all, God had no beginning, no end, and according to many people, either did the Planck length, in a sense, didn't either. It just exploded, and all this condensed, all this universe that was condensed into it, it's still there, and so it's just this little particle just blew up into these massive big particles, gigantic particles. I hope you haven't fallen off your chair. Grab onto the table. This stuff is really something. Okay, let's get on to the next question. The next question is, and this is a common question, why does God allow evil? This is a very, very good question. Do we see evil out there in the world today? You better believe we do. We see it every day. Every day we see evil. And the question would be is why, oh, why does God allow evil? Well, the answer is real love requires a free will. Real love requires a free will. So if you love somebody and they love you, if you took somebody and you were the only two people on an island and there was nobody else to love but that person, I suppose they'd be locked into loving you. But when someone has all kinds of other choices out there, other options of who they can love, but they choose to spend their life with you rather than somebody else, that's an act of their free will, and that's a demonstration of love. It's not a necessary, it doesn't have to be words. It's just a demonstration of their care and love and concern for you. They're willing to spend their time, their life with you. That's an act of their free will choice. And that is a description of love. And that's the way God created humanity, in order to love him and have a love relationship with him because they wanted to and not because they had to. But yet, free will does have a downside. So there's a side of free will that that has to be, because if you create somebody with a free will and you put them into a box and the only thing they can do is say, I love you, I love you, I love you, it's like creating a robot, a computer, and programming it. That's not what God wanted, you see. God does not desire to be the puppet master. He wanted someone that could love him because they wanted to, and not because they had to. But it does have a downside, folks. It does have a downside. You've got to realize that, first of all, you've got to realize in our past times of study, we've basically said God is infinite. He's all knowing. He's all knowledgeable. Basically, he doesn't need anything any more than you need to stop at Dairy Queen and get that strawberry sundae. It's you do it for your good pleasure, and God did this for his good pleasure. He created us, and he created us so that we could love him back, and he put us in an open environment to where we weren't forced to love him, but we could choose not to. And that's essentially the downside, because God's nature is holy, holy, holy. And if you have a love relationship with him and you're going to commune with God, sin and holiness doesn't mix any more than oil and water. And so that's the system that we're in, folks. And so, hell, hell is a free choice. You're essentially choosing not to have anything to do with the God that created the heavens and the earth. You're choosing to believe in this little particle that's 100 million billion times smaller than an atom that the whole universe was crammed into, rather than to believe in God. And that is stepping away from God, and that's your own free will. And hell has no exits, and you've making those choices. And so that has to be allowable in order for this relationship to occur. This relationship has to be available. And so it's made available, and a lot of people choose to go in the way that is diametrically opposed, not only to their design, to God's intent, but they just run in the opposite direction from God. But we all need to be aware, like in 1 Timothy 2, 3, and 4, the nature of God is revealed. This is good and pleasing God, and pleasing our God and Savior, who wants all men to be saved and to come to a knowledge of the truth. This is good and pleasing to God our Savior, who wants all men to be saved and to come to a knowledge of the truth. He doesn't want anybody to go to hell, but he is not going to force you against your will to have a love relationship with him. How would you like to be forced to have to love somebody and spend time with someone that you basically didn't like? And so he's not going to force people that don't want anything to do with him to have a love relationship with him. And that's the pitfall of free will. People have the ability to walk away from God. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing, but they do it. And that's just the reality. But you see, he doesn't want that to occur. He wants all people to have a relationship with him and come to the knowledge of the truth. Jesus says, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life, and no one cometh to the Father but by me. And that's what God's desire for every individual that has ever breathed air, to have that wonderful truth abiding, and knowledge abiding in their life. Okay, so now let's go on. Now let's do with question number 3. Question number 3: if God loves everybody, why do so many go to hell? Well, we just kind of went over a bit of that. It's a choice that they make. Free will has to be in order for a legitimate love relationship to occur, and it's a choice they have to make. But What was that question? Let's see that. If God loves everybody, why do so many people have to go to hell? This is a confusing thing that many people have been confused over this, and they just flat don't understand. I'm talking about Christians, non-Christians, everybody. They just don't understand it. And, God loves you. And the guy just he can't figure it out because the other guy, and if you don't believe it, he's going to throw you into hell, and so this can be very confusing to the non-believer, just how does all this stuff wash out? It just doesn't. God loves you, but if I don't believe he loves me, now if he loves me, there must be something awful good about me for him to love me. I guess I'm okay if he loves me. It certainly takes out any urgency to, I think he should love me. But the other guy says, and if you don't believe it, he'll throw you into hell. Well, it's these folks, man. A lot of these Bible thumpers, sometimes they just have a difficult time connecting the dots. Well, let's take a look here. Let's just move on here. What does this say? For God so loved the world. Oh, yes, we all know that verse. For God so loved the world. What Christian does not know that verse? My word. Yes, that verse, that solves it all. God loved the world. Solves all the questions right there. Yes. The problem is, that's a past tense statement. For God so loved the world. So loved the world. Does that say God loves the world? Or does it say God did love the world? Well, let's take a look at that. For God so loved the world. It's a past tense statement. And I believe it could be read this way. For God so loved the world system. The world system is what God loved. What system? This system. This system. He loved his system that he created. He loved the world, the system he created. For God so loved the world system. That system allows for Genesis 6:6. The Lord was grieved that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. This system right here allows for that to occur. This wonderful system that God created, that God so loved, allows for God's heart was filled with pain that he had created man. The Lord was grieved that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. What a horrible scenario for mankind. Oh, how horrible that is. And in Revelations 20:15, we see if anyone's name is not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. So if your name is not in the book, but rather in the books it's recorded, hell is your free choice because your name is in the books. It was your choice to separate yourself from God. All the time, God wanting you and desiring you to come to the knowledge of the truth. But you didn't want no part of it, friend. You wanted no part of it. And so if anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. God's heart was broken, and he was sorry that he even made man. Also, though, the value, Genesis 5:24, the value of this system right here, the incredible value of this system is off the charts. Absolutely off the charts. Words can't even begin to describe it. Genesis 5:24, Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. He had a wonderful, loving relationship with God. Oh, it was wonderful. But he was the exception, because the Lord in Genesis 6:6 was grieved that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. Well, his heart sure wasn't filled with pain with Enoch, because they had a wonderful, loving relationship, and God even took Enoch away from that despicable world that had evolved as a result of man's free choice to want to have no part with God. And then we have in Revelation 7:9, after this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, language, standing before the throne in front of the Lamb. And they were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands. You see, even though there are many, many people that are going to go to hell, the system that God so loved and put together enables Enoch to walk with God, and enables all of these people to have a loving relationship with God as a result of their free choice. Now, let's not forget the question here. If God so loved the world, why do so many go to hell? Well, let's take a look at what James Vernon McKee had to say. But the wicked and him that loveth violence, his soul hateth, referring to God. If you think God is just lovey-dovey, you had better read Psalms 11:5 and some of the other Psalms again. Now we have the Layman's Bible Commentary, and it says this: God hatred of evildoers, Psalms 5:4 and 5. God is not said to love the sinner and hate the sin. He is said to hate both the sinner and his sin. This sounds harsh to the modern Christian ear, but there is a truth here we dare not overlook. Augustine Hopkins Strong, Systematic Theology. There is no abstract sin that can be hated apart from the person in whom that sin is represented and embodied. It is the sinner who is punished, not the sin. And then we've got Martin Luther, and I got scores of these quotes. These I've just given you 4 out of maybe 50 or 100 of the history of Christianity these guys represent. So we go to Martin Luther. You all know who he is. He says, the psalmist says in Psalms 139:22, I hate them with perfect hatred, referring to God. And the first psalm also calls the Christian blessed who avoids and separates themselves from the wicked. Whoever handles pitch will soil himself with it. So the question, if God so loved everyone, why does so many go to hell? Well, it's a false premise. It's a false premise. God does not love everyone. Now, God demonstrates his love to everyone all the time. All the time. No one is escaped. I don't care if you're in death row. God is demonstrating his love to you all the time, no matter who you are, no matter how educated or uneducated, what geographical location, what race you are. God is demonstrating his love towards you all the time. And if you respond to that love, you will be the beneficiary of that love, eternal love relationship that will be bestowed upon you forever and ever and ever and ever, because that is God's desire for you. But if you choose to turn your back on God, you become a product of God's dissatisfaction. You become like these guys in Genesis 6:6. The Lord was grieved that he had made man. That would be you. He was grieved that he made man on earth, and his heart was filled with pain. He's total holiness. He has no other option but to repel you from his presence, and you become an object of his wrath when you choose to turn your back on him and walk in the way of the little particle the size of a plank length. Okay, well, let's move on here. Let's see, what's the next way? Oh, this is a good one. What is an agnostic? Yeah. You hear these words, and so we've got to be ready to understand and give an answer for some of this stuff. So what is an agnostic? Well, let's take a look here. What is an agnostic? One second here. I might have lost my place here. Let's see. No, that's not it. What is an agnostic? I got it right here. There's a lot of stress on me doing these programs. I can lose my place at times. Be patient with me, please. Be patient. I'm trying to do the best job I can. Occasionally, I lose my place. There's a lot going on here. So anyway, let's move on. There are two types of agnostics. You should understand that, because you will run into them. There are two types of agnostics. One, he says, I do not know. Maybe there is a God, and maybe there is not a God. That is one type of agnostic, and I've talked to many of them, and they are as sincere as a heart attack. Maybe there's a God, maybe there's not. I just don't know. And so we want to be gentle and respectful of these people and help them on their journey of life. So the one group says, I do not know. Maybe there is a God, and maybe there's not. I just don't know. But there's another group, this is group 2, and it says this: I do not know if there is a God. You do not know if there's a God, and no one knows if there is a God. And they are really dogmatic on this. I don't know, you don't know, and nobody knows that there's a God. This is the other. It's important you know what type of agnostic you're talking to, because your approach will be different depending upon the type of agnostic you're talking to. And so, if it's group 1, my question would be, he says, I do not know. Maybe there is a God, maybe there isn't. My first question: would you like to know? Would you like to know if there was a God? If there was really a God, would you want to know that he existed? That tells a lot about the person's heart and how he answers that question. And frankly, I've had it answered in any number of different ways, in speaking to many of them. But the one you're looking for is the one that says, well, if there was a God, certainly I'd want to know. What do you think? Nuts? There was a God that created the eyeball, the universe, the snowflake, the rainbow, the hummingbird, and he was really out there? Yeah, I'd really like to know. And when I ask them, I say, then let me ask you another question. Would you like to know? And then let me ask you another question. What's that? Have you ever read even one book out of the Bible? Most of them will say no. And then if they, and sometimes I'll even amplify it by saying, have you ever read one book out of the Bible because you wanted to and not because you had to? Because a lot of these agnostics, you'll find, have come from church backgrounds. So they've come from families that were very dedicated Christians. They had them in church every Sunday. I mean, they'd cram that stuff down those kids' throats. I mean, I've seen them to where they could memorize whole books of the Bible, and they force their kids. And I'll tell you, then the kids turn 19 and 18, 19, get to college, and they reject the whole thing because they were force fed their whole lives. And so lots of these agnostics in group one are people with, strong religious backgrounds. And that's why I ask them, have you ever read one book of the Bible because you wanted to and not because you had to? And the answer almost 100% of the time in either case is no. I haven't read a book of the Bible, or no, I've never read a book. I had one guy tell me, that's an interesting question. Never asked me that before. Yeah, I've never read a book because I just plainly just wanted to read in the Bible myself. And so that's the question I ask them, and then you can go from there. I'm just wetting your whistle here. Question number 2 to the group that says, I do not know if there's a God. You do not know if there's a God, and no one knows if there's a God. Well, do you mind if I ask your question? No, go ahead. How do you know what I know or anyone else knows when you admit that you do not know? So you're saying, I don't know. How do you know I don't know? In other words, rather than to fight with people and argue with people, I'm just asking a guy, because these are intelligent people often. I said, well, how do you know I don't know? Well, you can't know. How do you know I can't know? Well, nobody knows. How do you know nobody knows? You see, that it doesn't take long to convert the number 2 group into a number 1 group. They're just, once they get rid of their antagonism towards you, and you show them that you're honest and being respectful to them, and you kind of break down their antagonism against God and everything. Then they can easily be moved to group 2. And once you're in group 2, see, in both these groups, they're both admitting they're ignorant. So you can share with them, what if I would ask you, or you to come to me and you'd say, I want to work on this car engine. I'd say, well, I can teach you everything you want to know about the car engine. What do you know about it? Nothing. I mean, you don't know anything about a car engine? I don't know anything about a car engine. You mean you're absolutely ignorant to everything about a car engine? I'm absolutely ignorant to everything about a car engine. Well, let me ask you this. Would you be willing to let me tell you about a car engine and how it works and everything? No, I don't want to know from you. But you want to know how a car engine works, but you don't want to know. Is that what you're saying? Well, I just don't want to know from you. What is it about me that you don't want to know? Well, because you believe in that God. It really gets rather humorous, but you can't laugh. You can't giggle in front of them. You have to be respectful. And so if you're ignorant of something, and that's why I always ask the question, would you want to know? Are you willing to listen? Are you willing to know what I believe and why I believe it? and I make this not only to agnostics, but also to atheists. I make this point to them. I say, if you were to be patient and listen to everything that I am wanting to share with you about what Christianity is all about, I guarantee you the next time you ever run into someone like me, you'd be a whole lot better equipped to have a conversation with them. Because right now, you've admitted that you basically are somewhat ignorant to the subject of whether there's a God or not. And after you listen to me, I'm going to educate you. Even if you don't accept what I have to say, you're basically going to be a lot better equipped to have an intelligent conversation with the next person. And I say that in various different ways, but it's a technique that I use, and you can use it too. And oftentimes I've ended up I'm saying to some of these people, I say, well, let me ask you a question. I can just shoot like a machine gun, all kinds of facts and everything to you right now, and I can spend the next 30 minutes just machine gunning you with all kinds of stuff. But what I'd like to know is whether you'd be willing to maybe meet me and spend time with me, maybe just even an hour a week for the next 6 to 8 weeks, and discuss these things. And then I will try to answer your questions. If I can, I'll try to get an answer for them. And I'd like to explain to you kind of what I believe, why I believe it. Do it. I think it would be great. I'll tell you, frankly, I may learn quite a bit even from you in the process, because I'm sure you've got an awful lot to offer. So I was wondering if maybe we could do that. So there's all kinds of different approaches you can use, because what we're trying to do is get into the hearts of these folks, into the lives of these folks. Okay, let's move. We got another question here. Okay, the next question. Why are you not an atheist? And they will look you right straight in the face. Why are you not an atheist? Well, we've got to give them. When we answer these questions, we want to be able to give people an answer that they will accept. Why just spout out stuff that you know that they're going to reject? Are you really getting into their lives? Are you really able to maybe touch their heart when you just pound on them, hammer on them a bunch of stuff that they're not going to accept to begin with? So why not start with questions and start with information that they'll accept, and then you can build from on that. So one of the techniques that I'll use with an atheist is simply this: I have a question for the atheist. I have a question for you. What percentage of all known knowledge do you personally possess? Now, believe it or not, believe it or not, I have had people, on universities, look me straight in the eye with all the sincerity that you could possibly come up with and say, oh, probably 20%, 60% probably, 80%. I don't have 100, but I probably got 75%, 35%. Believe it or not, I've run into numerous people that would advocate that percentage. And so the way I present it to them is this. Well, we've got a library here on campus. We've got a library down there. It's called the City Library. And it's filled with books. And so if you've got 20% of all known knowledge, you would probably have 20% of the knowledge of 20% of all the books in that library, wouldn't you? If you've got 80% all known knowledge, you probably got 80%. I could probably go in there and just pick a book off the shelf and ask you any question in the world off it, and you'd probably be able to answer that. if you got 80%. Now, it's possible I could pick the 20%. And if you didn't know the answer to that, then we go on to the next book. And then if you didn't have the answer to that, I go on to the other aisle and pick a random book out of that aisle. And I start asking you questions about that. And eventually we might, get out of that 20% of, we've got to be able to hit something that you don't know. And if you're everything I'm asking you, you don't know, it's highly unlikely that you don't have 80% of all known knowledge, and even 20% of all known knowledge. But then I will come across intelligent people. And when I ask them, what percentage of all known knowledge do you personally possess? They will look me right square in the eye and they will tell me it would be a fraction of a fraction of a percent. Now, these guys are right on the money. They are being honest, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for honest people. Now, somebody could say 20% or 80%, and they're being honest too, because that's just what they think. But when you give them the example of the library, the honest ones will back off. I would say that almost all of them will back off. Not all of them. Some of them are just contentious. But almost everybody will back off, and they will get down there to that fraction of a percent rather rapidly once you use the correct example with them. And so then the next question would be is this: since you are ignorant to most known knowledge, how do you know a God does not exist beyond your knowing, your knowledge? And every one of them will say, well, I don't know. And that's when I say, congratulations, you've just become an agnostic if you don't know. You see, you're not an atheist, you're an agnostic. So I just had a conversion. I converted an atheist to an agnostic just over asking the right questions here. Since you are ignorant to most known knowledge, how do you know a God does not exist apart from your knowledge? And every atheist is going to have to say, no, I don't know. If he's honest, very possibly he could. And then they will skip to other things from there, like, well, give me some evidence. And I always ask myself, let me ask you this then. You want me to give you some evidence of the existence of God? See, and they'll say yes. I'll say, well, let me ask you this. Okay, I'm willing to attempt to do that, but can you tell me what type of evidence that I could give you that you would accept? And that creates a real problem with them. Well, if he came right in front of me, what if he came? Well, okay. What if he came in front of you, but he did a little bit more than that? He walked on water in front of you, or he healed a blind man in front of you, or he healed a deaf man in front of you. Would then you believe? I'll tell you, the answers you get are quite incredible. The devil has got these people so blinded and so contentious towards God, it's not funny. And Psalms 14:1 pretty much outlines it. It says, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. Their deeds are vile. There is no one who does good. And then in Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The fool despises wisdom and discipline. Psalms 92:6-7. The senseless man does not know, fools do not understand, that though the wicked spring up like grass and all evildoers flourish, they will be destroyed forever. Romans 1:20. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power, his divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made. So they are without excuse. They are without excuse. And so what I'm attempting to give you is just basically some tools that you can explore in your own thinking and understanding and expand on. But the idea is to be able, everyone you run into is going to have questions. And so to be able to have at least something to offer them, something to get the conversation going, for you to be able to ask some good questions. Most people, when they run into an atheist or a agnostic or a non-believer, they look at that as the opportunity to preach to them. I look at it as the opportunity to ask them questions and attempt to understand what they believe and why they believe and why they've went the course they would. And eventually they will always ask me, well, what do you think? And then I'll be able to share my testimony and the gospel with them. So here we have another question. We could just end now, but well, maybe we'll answer one more question or two. Let's see here. Do you believe in evolution? Well, that's a question that is commonly asked. Do you believe in evolution? Well, my answer is no. I don't believe in evolution, and I don't believe in it with good reason. But the evolutionist, he doesn't want to hear much other than what my mind's made up, so don't confuse me with the facts. My mind's made up. Don't confuse me with those facts. Don't provoke me to have to think. Now, they all say they believe in science. Science is the study of things that by observation and experiment. The observation and experimentation must be repeatable in order to be dependable. So in other words, nobody was around to observe evolution. There's no experiments that you actually have. And transition within a kind is not evolution. So when you ask them, well, show me evolution, what they'll do is they'll show you a bird. And look at the beak here, and look at the beak there, and look at the beak over here, or something else. And the point of it is, in all of your illustrations, all of you have shown me is a bird. A bird, you see, or a frog, or whatever it might be. You haven't shown me a frog with wings, you know. So you have to understand, we do see transition within a kind. That's why we have a quarter horse and we have a pony. We have a miniature horse and miniature dogs and large dogs. And these are all as a result of transition within the kind. And we go through this with every kind there is that is known to humanity. They're all have transitions within the kind. Now, some of these transitions and some of these kinds even become extinct, but nonetheless, transition of a kind is not evolution. Where is there an observable evidence of evolution? Where do we have an observable evidence of evolution? Where is an observable evidence of a change in kind? Where is the observable evidence of a change in kind? You believe in evolution? You want me to believe in evolution? Show me an observable evidence of a change in kind. Folks, there are none. There are none. But these people, these professors and these school teachers, they teach these lies to your children every day of the week. But because your children have not been trained to think, they buy into all this. They just buy into it all because they're learners. They're not thinkers. Where is the observable evidence of a change in kind? Please explain how non-life became life. You're peddling this great lie, and the very fundamental thing, how did this non-life become life? Explain that, please. They have no explanation for that. They have no idea whatsoever. All they've got is a lot of philosophizing. All they've got is a lot of erroneous theories. But they don't have anything concrete. Their position of evolution has more holes in it than Swiss cheese. There's no question of that. No question at all. Note, there is no known observable process by which new genetic information can be added to the genetic code of an organism. So it would be like if you had a bowl of cream of wheat and you wanted to make it into a bowl of half cream of wheat and half rice. You've got to be able to have the genetic code of the rice to be able to put into the cream of wheat or oatmeal, whatever. I forget the example I used, but you've got to get it from somewhere. It just doesn't poof out of thin air. These genetic codes, they're very precise. They're more sophisticated than your computer programs, and they just don't pop out of thin air. That's why you've got your brown eyes, and that's why you're the size you are, and that's why you've got the shape of the nose you do and the shape of the ear. It all has to do with your coding. And so when you have a certain kind, it's going to change to a different kind, and we see this kind and then we see that kind. There had to be some genetic coding that came into play in the recoding that was originally there. But where does that recoding come from? You see, these folks are at a loss. Evolution is just a absolute farce. But again, why do people believe in it? They believe in it because they don't want to believe in God. You see, they don't want to believe in God. They'd rather believe in that little tiny particle. It's 100 million billion times smaller than the atom that just all of a sudden, for no reason, exploded, and all the universe and all the whole thing just went into play. Oh, wow. How foolish people are today. Well, I'll tell you, I've got another question, but I think we've been going long enough. I think that we've got I thought we'd get a lot further than what we have today. And I've got trust me, I said a few weeks we'd probably be doing these questions, but right now it looks like more than just a couple of weeks. It looks like at the rate we're going, we're going to be here for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in these questions, because I've got a whole lot of real good questions that you're going to find very interesting. So I would say don't hesitate to tune in next week to Bible Talk with Bible Jim at 6 o'clock on Thursday. And I'm just going to squeeze up here real quickly and look. It looks like we've got some comments here, but I don't have. I'm not. Luke, you see, is my comment guy. I'll look these over later. And if anybody's got a good question that they think I should address on one of these programs, just write it out in all cap letters, and I'd be happy to, if it has merit, I'll add it to the list. But hold on for a second. Oh, Luke is here. Hello, Luke. Yeah.
Hi, brother. I just wanted to at least show up for a minute. My voice won't last very long, but I think I'm just so disappointed that I can't engage with you tonight. The teaching tonight just got me so excited. I made a lot of comments in the chat room. Maybe you can look through it there and see what I said and what others had to say. But it was just more great teaching, and I'm disappointed that I don't get to kind of review it all with you. If I talk much longer, I'll probably go into a coughing fit. Okay?
Yeah, well, we understand, Luke, that you're having a problem, and I hope you get better by next week. But we're here for you whenever you're well enough to come back. Man, I'll be looking forward to it. So, but I won't ask you for any more tonight. And we'll end the program, and we'll pick it up next week with some. I'll tell you, I got some questions that you're going to want some real good questions next week for you. So we'll end the broadcast now, and God bless you all, and hope to see you next week, Thursday night, 6:00. Have a good week.